back at you once again on the day after Columbus Day, October 15th, the year of our Lord 2024, which is a Tuesday once again at the world-famous Parkway Diner in Stamford, Connecticut. Thankfully, it's a little quiet here tonight. Okay, just a couple of things. I will admit we were scrambling to put some of this stuff together. The links should be up tomorrow, all right? But I did put up our main essay, and it's the theme for the week, titled China's Fear of Failure. As some people have pointed out, not enough attention has been given by the media to what happened after what is called the third plenum meeting of the Communist Chinese leadership. So the take-home message here is that China's economy, generally acknowledged, is struggling, has been struggling for some time. It's not quite clear how bad it is, but you just find that the government has to keep shoring up their economy. And the latest, let's see if I can find it, the latest was the bazooka. Did anybody catch the bazooka? Yes. So there I was quietly watching CNBC because I'm an amateur investor, and they mentioned China's bazooka. It's like, oh wow. And so yes, the Hang Seng Index, I'm going to say the Sichuan or Shanghai Index, they saw their companies going up significantly on this news. Now, just to read a little quote here because it's okay, they're stimulating their economy, but how? How are they doing it? So the central bank, that would be the People's Bank of China, is pumping trillions of yuan into the economy through a variety of stimulus measures, lowering reserve requirements, very risky, reducing key interest rates. All right, that might stimulate the economy, and introducing new liquidity programs. Now, what this passage here doesn't quite explain is that for years, the Chinese Communist Party has effectively hidden a lot of its debt by passing that debt to the local towns and municipalities in the country. I think this may be catching up with them, and they're trying to re-stimulate those areas that are in trouble, but I'm not sure they're going to be able to get away with it. The other part, of course, is we've seen all these reports about how the Chinese real estate market is in trouble, starting with Evergrande, and then there was another large developer. If they didn't go bankrupt, they've come very close, but it took interventions by the Chinese government to do this. Okay, what this adds up to is government intervention in what passes for a private sector in a communist country. Is that a good idea? The short answer is no, because just like with the federal government in America, the money comes with strings attached. And those communist strings are no better than our strings, let me tell you. Okay, so JP Morgan has reported on this, and they are pessimistic, to put it mildly. I listened to a guy named Scissors. What was his name? Chris Scissors? Here, I need to get his name, bear with me. But he also pointed out that at best, Derek Scissors from the American Enterprise Institute, we can expect in the third or in the fourth quarter for this year and the first quarter next year that the Chinese economy might look like it's doing better, but these interventions will have run their course. So what is China's follow-up act going to be? We don't know. We don't know. But what we do know is that what they have done now is, the way I put it in the essay, is that the Chinese leadership has now assumed the fetal position, all right? They made it clear that they are not, even though they're doing these financial interventions, the decision is to focus more on preserving their political power, and this is a public statement by the Communist Party in this third plenum meeting, than they're going to do to work on economic prosperity. Okay, maybe that's another way of saying they're giving up on economic prosperity. Now, all of a sudden, ladies and gentlemen, we've got to stop a second here because this is big news, all right? I don't know if we've really fully appreciated the impact here. The background, of course, is, if you've been following China, is their demographic collapse. Okay, so one thing is we know that their population, they've been lying about their population. Now we know that it's somewhat smaller than it really is. We know that they're having fertility problems. We know they have an aging population like we do in America, but it may be worse for them. So the combined effect here is they're not going to have enough workers to support the retired people plus grow the economy. So that whole idea of economic prosperity suffers. If you compound that with the declining conditions in the real estate market in China, the economy is not going to be doing very good. Now let me just add one more tidbit to this. As the economy weakens, that's going to weaken their demand for, wait for it, oil. So you're going to see the global oil market start to go down. I believe, let me check my facts, I have to get back to you, but I believe that China consumes about 10% of the oil in the world. So a decrease on their part may by itself not seem that great, but we've seen in the past when there have been these shifts in supply for oil, that a little shift in the available amount of oil can have a big impact on the price. So if we have a little drop in demand from China, that could definitely start to force oil prices down. We've seen them go pretty low in the past. So it's called get ready. So the other part here, just to read this, for years, high debt and low demand have stalked China's housing sector, and these issues have proven near impossible to shake. So let me just offer some editorial commentary here on just what the hell is going on with China here. The communist Chinese leadership have had to make compromises with capitalism. They are certainly not, if anything, the communist Chinese are a hybrid government. In ways, the American government is hybrid in different ways, but it's still the same idea. With respect to China, they have discouraged various forms of entrepreneurship and the owning of businesses. Now, the normal kind of involvement that you and I would do in this country is apparently not allowed. How that works, I don't know, but this is what we are told. So what people are allowed to do is invest in property. So you have this huge population, and what resources they have as individuals are then funneled into real estate projects. And to see those projects fail as they have, it's going to be ruinous for the people who have their life savings in these areas. It's going to be ruinous for the country as a whole. So I'm just going to make the statement here and then move on to the next thing. We've seen this before. We have seen China get into trouble, and every time they manage to pull it out. So I'll give them credit for that, and I think we'll see the same thing here. Plus, there's a long-term perspective. As many have pointed out, the communist Chinese are supposedly long-term planners. They think in hundreds of years, and we think in terms of quarterly statements, as they say. But in the midterm here, in the next 20 to 30 years, we see some significant changes that, quite frankly, are going to weaken the country. And they're not going to stand for that, okay? And they're not going to stand for that until they've taken Taiwan, which is a whole other discussion. All right. So that's our State of the America report. Now I want to talk about Project One. Project One. If you recall, I had mentioned the research on the drug cartels. There's something like 150 drug cartels. There's over 100,000 people who work for these drug cartels. The vast majority of them are Mexican, but there's a smattering of Asian and European. And it's what are you going to say? The Venezuelan drug cartel that we keep hearing about in the news, Tren de Aragua, is small potatoes, all right? They've had an outsized impact and an outsized influence. And I just need to point out, so here, let me just show you this. Okay, this is a map of Mexico here. And there's about a half dozen zones there. There are different ellipses if you look really close. And each of those represent general spheres of influence for the dominant drug cartels in those areas. So that should give you a sense of what we're working with. If we were to put up a sphere of influence for Tren de Aragua, they would barely show up in this map, okay? Here we're talking about over 100,000 people, and I believe it's, what, maybe 2,000 who will work with Tren de Aragua. Let me just rattle off some names for you, then I'm going to move on to the next part. Okay, number one is the Sinaloa cartel. If you follow the news, you've probably heard of them, but I was surprised about number two. Number two is the Gulf cartel, all right? And again, we'll have the link up for this, so you can check it out. Then the Medellin cartel, which we've heard about, the Juarez cartel, and then I'll stop at the Los Zetas cartel as number 5. And so this article gives you 15 of them. And nobody says anything about how they work together, if not compete with each other. All right, there's that project. Next, if you've been following me, you've heard me bitch and moan about Connecticut, okay? This is a backwater economy. As some person said, our economy is silently eroding, okay? Silently eroding. But here's the problem. It could be the Hartford Courant, okay? It could be the New Haven Register. It could be the New London Day. It could be any of the dominant newspapers in this state that have continued to basically lie about the true state of Connecticut's economy. The award for being not a part of the crew goes to the Connecticut Mirror. So thank you, Desiree Sin, of all names, for this article. The title, Connecticut Lags Behind U.S. in Job and Income Growth. Now, as is often the case, great, you've stated the truth. There's just one problem. You haven't told the whole story, okay? There is a whole story to be told. First, let me take her top line number. She says that there are about 55,560 fewer jobs in the state of Connecticut than if it had maintained its growth since February 2020. So, okay, sure. She, like others, fall into the trap of wanting to blame COVID for Connecticut's economic malaise. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, it's worse than that. It's a lot worse than that. I have brought up the fact that the Federal Reserve has a report, the St. Louis report, which tracks the state GDP for Connecticut. Our state GDP has been getting smaller, not bigger, all right? And depending upon who you're talking to, we're in the bottom 5 or the bottom 10 roughly for economic performance in the nation. Yes, each state does better or worse than another as far as economic performance is concerned, and we are by far the worst in New England, no question. Okay, well, maybe some of you might want to ask, well, why is that? Why would Connecticut not be doing well economically? Well, I'm glad I asked the question because I got some answers for you. There has been an anti-business culture in Connecticut for I don't know how long, okay? I first blame the unions. The unions have had too much influence in our state government. So you always had legislation that's favored the unions. And if there's one thing about unions, they are antagonistic to entrepreneurship. They are antagonistic to innovation, okay? They are antagonistic to businesses in general, even though that's where they get their money, okay? And what you see is this tendency to resist change of any kind. This is certainly the one thing that's the earmark of these unions. They have defined the character and the culture in the state of Connecticut for business. So it becomes no surprise that we're at the bottom of the list for just about every metric when it comes to desirability for business, all right? I mean, there are some things that will mislead you in terms of the health of the economy, but if it's about long-term growth and development, no. We're kind of riding on our laurels and can only do that for so long. So thank you, Desiree Sin, for a good article. that gets it about 80% right. Okay, so that's project 2. Meantime, here we go. I just wanted to bring this up. Okay, I happen to enjoy those Indiana Jones movies. And we certainly remember the search for the Holy Grail, right? It turns out that the very place, which is called Petra in Jordan, where they shoot this here, I'll give you a picture here so you know what I'm talking about. If you've seen the movie, you know that structure there. This is an unbelievable historical piece, the Aldair Monastery. Okay, several years ago, somebody noticed, wait a second, it looks like there might be some tombs near here. They weren't quite sure what to do with it, but they finally got around to doing the digging. Well, who happens to show up just in time to do a fabulous show on this subject? That would be Josh Gates himself from Expedition Unknown. So they found 12 skeletons in this tomb. Funny, that number 12. Where have I heard that before? And they claim to have found a particular chalice in these tombs. Makes you wonder. So they're still working on it. More tombs to uncover, but I thought that was pretty cool. And let's see here. All right. So I picked as a theme China's fear of failure. All right. And just to finish the whole idea off, if they're going to double down on political control and not engage in prosperity, they're confronting failure. They're doing what they can to avoid failure, all right? This is a change from where even 5 years ago they would have looked out and said, our future is rosy. Not anymore. Meantime, J.D. Vance gets the prize for the quote of the week. Martha, do you hear yourself? Okay, if you saw it, there she was, Martha Raddatz, news babe from way back when, suggesting that, well, that drug gang from Venezuela, they only took over a few apartments, and it was just in a few complexes. At which point J.D. Vance had to say, Martha, do you hear yourself? Since when do you even allow something like this to happen? This is unheard of. And you're saying it's not a big deal. This is why there are people like me who don't trust liberals, because they cannot confront the fact that harm is being perpetrated on our society. You keep downplaying it. It's just like the riots in Minneapolis, and the guy got in front of that burning building, and he's saying, well, they're mostly peaceful protests. Are you serious? Another case of, can you hear yourself? Do you see where you're standing? Do you see what's behind you? Wow. Wow, so thanks, JD, and I can only pray that his kind of leadership will be around. All right, just to bring up Tren de Aragua again, there are reports that this gang is now terrorizing people in, wait for it, Times Square. Okay, in some respects, Times Square is the heart of America, okay? Home to so much entertainment and is a tourist spot. And now you have them terrorizing people in Times Square. At what point do you stand up and say, enough, we are taking these people out? Unfortunately, it's not happening. Now, speaking of taking people out, wow. Okay, some of you may have heard or not heard about the allegations that good old Kamala, may have plagiarized her own works. So you had the New York Times, once again, downplaying this, where we heard this before. And so they said, well, it's just 5 sections, just 500 words. Nope. So good old Chris Rufo came back and pointed out that the Times was really doing their best to overlook the fact that the extent of the plagiarism was much greater. So I just want to see if I can find the key evidence here. There were more than a dozen works. To me, it's kind of odd when you're plagiarizing yourself. But anyway, so we'll have, this link will be up too, but What you see here are passages, Kamala Harris and the John Jay College of Criminal Justice, and these are just selected examples of plagiarism. It's plagiarism. They're both the same, okay? I'll just read one sentence. High Point had its first face-to-face meeting with drug dealers from the city's West End neighborhood. That was Kamala. And then you had John Jay College of Criminal Justice. High Point had its first face-to-face meeting with drug dealers from the city's West End neighborhood. I don't know. They kind of sound the same. I think they do. Yeah. So, I mean, all right, as a person who's written a lot, I can understand why you would want to use your own works, especially if you're covering the same territory. But you know what? It would help if you even referenced your own work. Normally, that's what you try to do. Okay. Meantime, this really gets me. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have to tell you, one of the most amazing things I think we have seen in recent times was Elon Musk's company, SpaceX, doing, what would you call that, a pinpoint recovery of the booster on their tower that recovered the rocket. The nation has seen this, and it is astonishing, okay? For my money, the part comes at the very last second as it comes to rest in the cradle. Okay, the booster comes down, there's no wobble. No wobble, okay? It just came down and landed precisely in the cradle. With all those forces, with any wind that's blowing, any of the environmental conditions upset it, that was amazing. Okay, I just want to make the point that there are people who are still the enemy of this country. They really are, and some of them have a name. That name would be the California Coastal Commission. Check them out, because these are the same jerks, the same idiots, the same fools. The adjectives will just keep on coming, who, because they got a little pissy about some of the things that Elon Musk was tweeting out on X, and they accused him of misinformation. Yeah, it's called Look Who's Talking. And because of that, they have banned 50 future launches of SpaceX from California. Wow. I guess I would have wanted to have been in that meeting. I want to understand how people got this crazy and this stupid to make this their way of dealing with Elon Musk. Do you have any idea how bad it makes you look, Mr. California Coastal Commission? So yeah, let me just throw out some names. All right, first stupid person, Effie Turnbull Sanders is the commissioner. There's her ugly face right there. And let's just throw in, let's see here. Oh, another commissioner. Dana Bochco. There she is. All right. They don't get any dumber. And let's see here. Dr. Carol Hart, who's the chair. All right. There you go. There's another idiot on display. Okay. How about Susan Lowenberg, commissioner? How about that one? Okay. What is with these people? What are they thinking? A great American accomplishment, putting us back on the map in the space race. And your answer is to say, no, you can't do it anymore. Boy, all right, the phrase drawn and quartered comes to mind. Now, of course, a milder answer would be tarred and feathered. What do you think, Alan? Which one should I go for? All right, maybe we'll be nice to them and we'll just tar and feather them. It's just, it blows my mind. Look, this nation is defined by its capacity to invent and improve things and reach for the stars and do things that have never been done before. That was never done before. And now because you got a problem with politics, you're going to step on something like that? God, there is no punishment great enough to deal with you people as far as I'm concerned. None. All right, what am I missing here, Eric? I know there's one other. It's the J6 thing. Okay. On our continuing January 6th coverage, Darren Beatty has been providing us with more information about what's coming down the pike. So I'll just mention briefly that yes, the Inspector General for the Department of Justice is sitting, as in rear end on a piece of paper, sitting on the report that discloses exactly who, as members of the federal government, were in the Capitol on January 6th. In other words, it was a setup, all right? The Department of Justice Inspector General is holding on to that report. The pressure is for him to release this before the election. Will that happen? Well, Darren Beatty gives it about a 35% chance. But okay, so this is part of what I've called before the ongoing striptease with respect to the facts of how the federal government basically deceived a lot of people as far as this situation is concerned in the Capitol building. We don't have all of the story yet, but it's not hard to figure out the arc. Okay, you can follow the arc, and I think it's a safe bet as to where it's going to land.
We're not drawing any conclusions.
We may not be drawing any conclusions, but boy, that arc seems to be moving in a certain direction. And gee, who's that sitting right there where the arc might land? Isn't that Merrick Garland over there? Yeah, I think that's him. Okay, on that happy note, thanks guys, and see you next week.